Well, good morning. Welcome to our youth takeover. My name is Nick. I'm the youth pastor here at LifePoint. And to give you guys the full youth group experience, because you guys are basically my youth group right now, what we're going to do is we're going to have Pastor Doug bring out some dodgeballs. I hope you guys came ready for action, that you stretched, right? I see some worried faces. I'm kidding. We're not going to make you guys throw dodgeballs at each other this time. Maybe next time. So here we are. We're at the end of 2019. End of the year. It's been a crazy year for us. It's been an amazing year for us. My wife and I, my family, we moved up here to Lake Stevens. We joined LifePoint, and it's been a phenomenal year for us. We've fallen in love with this church. We've had such a warm welcome from you guys. We love this community. Even Pastor Rusty's growing on us. And I mean, like, what's exciting for me is that this is a church that impacts its community. You guys do a phenomenal job. This year we've done the Military Appreciation Day. Our green team served at Aquafest. We collected a lot of needed items for the Bridge Receiving Center, and that's just scratching the surface. There's so many amazing ministry moments that I've had. There's one in particular I want to share with you guys today. So back in October, at the invitation of one of our high school students, I attended this event in Everett called Out of the Darkness. This event was it was a march to raise awareness for suicide prevention. And so we were going there. We were going to walk in the honor of a friend of hers who was a Lake Stevens High School student who tragically had taken his life. While I was there at the event, I'm standing in line for registration. This lady gets in line behind me, and we get to talking, right? And we have a ton of stuff in common, right? She's from Southern California. I'm from Southern California. We both moved up to Oregon in our mid-20s and landed in Lake Stevens. And she was also meeting people there from her church, which was crazy. And then then she asked me what I do for a living, as these conversations tend to lead. And I told her I was a youth pastor. And then it got serious. She asked me, as a pastor, as somebody in ministry, how would you address the goodness of God with all these people here in light of their pain? How do you talk about God being a good God when there's pain and suffering in the world? And I told her that this is a very important question, and it's a question that I had to overcome in order for me to have a relationship with God. This was my biggest hurdle, and so I shared with her my story. I said that, my story. I was born to a teenage mom who was homeless. The reason she was homeless was because she decided to stay a teenage mom rather than the other alternatives that were presented to her. And so, luckily, I was born in April in Southern California, so sleeping in parks was manageable. So we slept in parks. Occasionally, we would stay with friends of hers, and one night, while we were staying with one of her friends, luckily I wasn't in the car, but my mom got into a car accident that nearly took her life. So she was in a coma for 6 months, and I was sent to go live with a family who was less than thrilled that I existed. Eventually, she came back from the hospital, but as a result of her accident, she sustained a traumatic brain injury. And this kind of brain injury made it very difficult for her to regulate her emotions. And then on top of that, she didn't remember me. And so we have a teenage mom, emotionally volatile, with a kid she doesn't remember. So there was some neglect and some abuse in my childhood. She eventually met my stepdad, and things got a little bit better. He had a home, so that's a plus, right? They had my brother and sister, and things were good. Eventually, his business, because of the economy, had suffered and failed. And in order to cope with this, he turned to substances. And when he was under the influence, he was just as emotionally volatile as my mom was. So then things got really bad. So I grew up not believing that there was much good in the world. My opinions of God were not very high. I believe that if there was a God, there's no way that he's good. Or if he is good, he must definitely hate me. And so in order for me to wrestle with this, like, how in the world could there be a good God when there's pain in this world? I'm sure many of you guys have asked that same question. Maybe you are asking that question today. because things go wrong in our life, right? Jobs fail, marriages fail, our health fails. And sometimes it's difficult to see God's goodness in light of our pain. So in order to answer this question, I think it's important that we go back to the beginning. Because the Bible says in the very beginning, when God created everything, he said everything was good. And we see this in repetition. After the first day he created all this stuff, it was good, it was good, it was good. Even mosquitoes and cats, for whatever reason, they were good too. I don't get it. But it says this as almost to drive that point home, that God made everything and nothing was made that wasn't made by God, and everything that was made was good. Now, it doesn't say that God created this separate thing called evil. So evil is not the opposite of good. Evil and sin came out of this goodness that God had created. So sin and evil isn't the opposite. It has to be the distortion of good things. It's when we take good things and we misuse them that bad stuff happens. So to illustrate this, let's look at sex, right? So God created sex. He made it it's supposed to be this great and amazing and wonderful thing. It allows husbands and wives to become one. It's enjoyable, praise God, right? And it allows us to participate in the creation process. We get to make humans, right? By the way, anytime a pastor mentions sex from the stage, it's kind of a life hack, right? You instantly double the attention in the room. So now that I have your attention, but God gave us this thing that's amazing and beautiful and wonderful. Can sex be bad? Is there such thing as bad sex? I don't want to see any heads nodding out there. If your spouse is here, you're about to get yourself in trouble, right? This is a rhetorical question. But the fact is that, it can be. We have things like infidelity that damage marriages and hurt families, sometimes irreparably. It can be had carelessly and spread disease and illness. We can even see sex used in very evil and predatory ways. God gave us something beautiful and amazing, and we can make it ugly real quick. God didn't create evil, we did. And when there's evil and sin, there's damage. And when there's damage, there's pain. And that pain, even though it doesn't feel good, it's actually a good and healthy process. Pain is a good thing. It does not feel that way all the time. Let me illustrate it this way. So a few years ago, I learned about this disease called SEPA, this disorder. It stands for congenital insensitivity to pain. And at first, I thought okay, the people who have this, they definitely won the genetic lottery, because that sounds like some superhero stuff. You don't feel any pain? This is amazing, right? Or as Pastor Rusty would say, amazing. Yeah. But as I learned more about this disease, I found out that there's actually a lot of problems that come along with it. The people who have this disorder often have to check their temperature, their body temperature, to make sure they're not overheating or that they're hypothermic. If they sustain an injury, sometimes it's made worse because they don't know to protect it, right? Pain lets us know, hey, stop that damage from continuing. There have even been people who have died from appendicitis because they didn't have the warning signs to let them know something had gone wrong. And that's what pain is. Pain lets us know that something's gone wrong. Damage has been done, and we're experiencing something that is foreign to our intended design. So pain's good. My wife and I, we bought our home in Oregon, and when we bought this home, it had this pellet stove. And this thing, if you don't know what a pellet stove is, it's just a box of stupid hotness, right? So this thing, we obviously knew it was going to be a danger, especially once we had, we got pregnant with our daughter, and we're like, hey, as soon as we can, we need to instill a healthy fear of this thing, right? Because it's just asking for it. It's toddler height, right? And it has this glowing temptation inside. And so as early as we could, we wanted to let her, hey, no, don't touch this. It's dangerous, right? Anybody in here have kids, right? How many of your kids listen to you 100% of the time? Ours neither, right? So one day I'm walking to the bathroom and she's following behind me, and we pass the pellet stove, and I hear her screech, right? And she's just, like, I turn around, her fingers up, she's bawling. She had that, like, you know, that pathetic, like, stutter cry, that, right? She's in pain. And as her dad, I don't want my daughter to be in pain. But also as her dad, I want her to have a healthy fear of things that can harm her. I think the same is true with our Heavenly Father, that He's created us for a purpose, and anytime we're outside of that, pain acts as a compass to guide us away from damage. And sometimes that's damage that we're causing in our own lives. I know I'm not the only one in here who's caused pain for myself, right? My own actions have caused pain in my own life. And so pain is supposed to be this thing that reminds us to stop the damage from happening, to stop doing things. But sometimes it's not our own doing, right? Other people can hurt us as well. I think that James, the brother of Jesus, actually, he wrote this down. He said, "Consider it pure joy whenever you suffer trials of various kinds, because we know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Joy is not a natural state of being when we're in pain. It's not. Underline that word, consider. What James understands is that there's a deliberate mindset that we have to have in order to find joy in our pain. Anybody been on the trestle 5 p.m. on a Friday? Or as I call it, purgatory on wheels, right? Last thing I'm feeling is joy. But if we train our minds in those times of suffering to understand that pain is a good and a healthy thing, the way that we understand pain can change the way that we experience it and definitely the way that we respond to it. So pain is good. One of the unfortunate consequences of pain, because it lets us know that damage is done, and so sometimes what happens is we tend to avoid other damage. And if that pain came from another person, sometimes we avoid other people. Now some of you guys might be, so pain can cause isolation, and some of you guys are like, that's exactly my goal most days, right? Especially the introverts in here, right? You're like, people are pain in my butt, and because of that pain, I avoid them, and avoiding people is the best part of isolation. So yeah, pain leads to isolation. That's probably why some of you guys are watching online. I'm not talking about momentary, so sometimes it's good to peel away, right? Recharge our batteries, regroup, so that we don't hurt somebody. But what I'm talking about is that isolation that sticks. Where we're so afraid of potentially being hurt by somebody else that we start to push all people away. And in doing so, we prevent pain, but we also prevent the possibility of joy. This is something that I know very well. This is something I debated about sharing with you guys because this is a part of my story where there's some pain and honestly a little bit of shame. But I was encouraged to share. So, I've been divorced. I got married in college, and we were married for 6 years, and I found out that she had an affair. I wanted to reconcile, and she didn't. So she filed divorce papers, and I kind of just went into hiding, kind of fell apart. For a solid month, I lived on my couch. I wouldn't interact with people, I'd barely eat, until my best friend's like, bro, you have to get up and like at least eat, please take a shower, something, right? For my sake, do something. But he encouraged me, he's like, you can't stay here because nothing's getting better. You have to go out. I didn't want to go out there. I didn't want to talk to people about what was going on. I didn't want to share anything. But I did. And in doing so, I found out that I'm not the first person to be divorced, right? Surprise. And other people have gone through that, and they're okay. And in talking through that stuff and in sharing kind of war stories, I was able to find some healing. we should seek community in our pain. Pain has this ability to create these bonds, these connections that are almost instant. So my wife, she had a 47.5-hour labor, which you can imagine was difficult for me. I'm totally kidding. I'm about to get in trouble. I'm kidding. No, I see my wife talk about this, and other moms who have gone through it, there's this instant understanding of what she has gone through. I was in the room, and I feel less a part of that understanding of what happened, because I didn't experience it. Like, I witnessed it, but I didn't experience it. So as we experience pain, we have this ability to connect with people. I've seen it in soldiers who've especially those who've been deployed to conflict zones. They get to talking with one another, and there's this instant brotherhood, this instant understanding, because they've had to endure things that other people haven't had to. If you've dealt with a cancer diagnosis, an addiction, an abusive relationship, when somebody else has that kind of pain and that kind of experience, you get it. I saw this especially in a very profound way when I was at that event in Everett. They did this thing called the bead ceremony. Now, I know these look like Mardi Gras beads, so Pastor Doug, I'm gonna need you to keep your shirt down. That's not what we're doing. But they did it's called the bead ceremony, and the lady leading it, she explained that each color represented something unique. She said, if you've lost a parent to suicide, if you've lost a child, hold up your color. If the person you lost was military or first responder, if you lost a child or a spouse. And one by one, in this crowd of 600 people, you see these isolated hands go up. And without words being exchanged, these people looked around and they had this instant understanding, this instant connection to somebody else who knew exactly what they were experiencing. I saw people reach out and hug one another. Our pain can create a bond. I think there are few things in life that bring us more hope than knowing that we're not alone in our pain. Romans chapter 12, verse 9 through 16 says, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves, never lacking in zeal, but keep spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. God's created us to be in community with one another. When we're hurting, we need to seek out people who understand it, because I promise you, you'll find healing there. And if you've gone through something, some kind of pain, some kind of trouble in your life, and you see somebody else going through it, be the first to reach out. Everything in this passage speaks to the importance of our community. And it tells us that the antidote to pain and evil is to be devoted to one another in love. If somebody came to me and they wanted a cheat sheet on how to care for somebody who was in pain, this would be the passage I give them. Number 3, we should seek God in our pain. And I know that this can be difficult, because it was for me. A few years ago, I took a trip to Southern California to visit my sister for the last time. She had been diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And I was given power of attorney, and it was my job to make the call to move her from palliative care into hospice. And so I went down there, and I was having a very, very bitter battle with God. I got there and relieved my family, sent them home because they were exhausted. And I saw my sister just depleted by this disease. And I sat there with her. She was too weak to push the remote that administered her morphine. And so I did that for her. And every few minutes I'd push it, and she'd be at peace. And then slowly she'd begin to whimper, and then cry, and then full agony. And I'm staring, waiting for the stupid light to turn green so I could push it again and buy her a few moments of peace. And this went on every few minutes. Until about 4 o'clock in the morning, when she woke up. She asked for some water. I gave her water. She asked for her pillow to be adjusted. She made a joke about wearing a diaper. And she was happy. She was happy. She told me she was at peace. She was making jokes. I began to wonder if maybe I pushed that button too many times. She saw that I was struggling. She told me that she was at peace, and she was happy. She asked me, she's like, isn't it crazy that even death, even the punishment for our sin, is still mercy from God? Because without death, we're stuck in our sin, and I'm stuck in this broken body. But this will be over soon. And my pain and my illness is not the end of my story. And she shared something in wisdom that immediately eliminated my bitterness towards God, because it was there. She shared this passage from 2 Corinthians. She said, that's why we never give up. Though our bodies are dying, our spirits are being renewed every day. For our present troubles are small and won't last. Yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them, which will last forever. So we don't look at the troubles that we can see now. Rather, we fix our gaze on the things that cannot be seen. For the things that we see now will soon be gone, but the things that we cannot see will last forever. In that moment, all I could see was my little sister dying. I could see her weakness and pain. But she was able to see how much bigger God was than her problems were. Sometimes our problems are really big, right? They are. But when we hold up our problems to an infinite God, they get a little bit smaller and a little bit more manageable. This last Christmas we celebrated. This last week we celebrated Christmas. And Pastor Rusty said that Christmas is always tied to the cross. It's this reminder that we have a God that meets us in our pain. That he sent his son to die on our behalf, a death that we deserve. So God meets us in our pain, but he doesn't want to leave us in our pain. Jesus overcame death so that we could have hope. So I'm going to have the ushers come forward. They're going to pass out communion. And this becomes a representation of just that. That no matter what our pain is, we have a God that is willing to meet us in it. The night before he was arrested, Jesus met with his disciples. And they broke bread, and he took the cup, and he said, "This is my body broken for you. And this is my blood poured out for you." It is through that sacrifice that we have hope. That our pain is not the end of our story. So as this song plays, in your own time, I want you guys to reflect, give your pain to God, and take the cup, eat the bread. in worship, and let this be a time of worship for you guys.
I come, God, I come, return to the Lord, the one who's broken, the one who's torn me apart. You struck down to bind me up, you say you do it all in love. I might know you in your suffering. And though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. My heart and flesh may fail, the earth below give way. With my eyes, I'll see the Lord lifted high upon that day. Behold the Lamb that was slain, and I'll know every tear was worth it all. And though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. Lord, tonight I'm crying now. Let this cup pass from me now. You're still more than I need. You're enough for me. God, you're enough for me.
That you meet us in that. God, that the pain in our life is this reminder that this is not what we were meant to be. This is not what we were meant to experience, but you're a God who has created us for joy and for glory. God, it's not a surprise that pain repels us from damage and is supposed to push us towards people and to you. God, Jesus said that the greatest commandment is to love God and to love others. God, the greatest commandment is the antidote to our pain, to our suffering, to the consequences of our sin. We thank you so much that you love us so much to provide a way so that our pain and our brokenness is not the end of our story. God, you are good. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Folks, let's show some thanks to Pastor Nick. God is so very good, and this is Nick's first time sharing in one of our adult services. And for those of us that have done that hundreds of times, it's not an easy task. But folks, Pastor Nick is an incredibly real and authentic and transparent leader. And this is a real and authentic and a transparent church. So we need to thank God for that. That's an incredibly great thing. But this is the guy who is leading our student ministry. Is that incredible? Yes. It's awesome. So on behalf of the entire staff, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. If you've never checked out a Saturday night service, we'd love to have you join us this weekend. You guys have a great Happy New Year. Thank you for coming.